Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our planning meeting this evening. It's Monday, May the 26th, 2025. This meeting will be streamed live and recorded for public viewing on the town's YouTube page. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together, as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. Council, I remind you, if you have a pecuniary interest, to please declare it at the appropriate time. Clerk, I see there was nothing listed for delegations. Nothing has been added since then.
Nothing's been added, Your Worship.
Thank you. We'll go to item 5.1. I have a motion by Councillor Rodriguez, seconded by Councillor Vasey. And this is a motion previously brought forward by Councillor Rodriguez regarding Bill 5. Whereas the province has introduced Bill 5, Protect Ontario by Unleashing Our Economy 2025, which is intended to speed up housing and economic development in Ontario. And whereas the proposed legislation will include the repeal of the Endangered Species Act of 2007 and replace it with the Conservation Species Act of 2025. And whereas the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks primarily manages the Act, Committee of the Status of Species in Ontario is responsible for assessing and classifying species. And whereas Class is comprised of experts with scientific and traditional knowledge and operates independently from the government, ensuring impartial assessments of species at risk. The provincial cabinet will now decide what species will remain or be removed from endangered, concerned, or at risk status. And whereas the current law considers the habitat to be all the areas that the species relies on for living, gathering food, migrating, hibernating, and reproducing. The new law, however, narrows that definition to a dwelling place, such as a den, nest, or other similar place that is occupied or habitually occupied by one or more members of a species for the purpose of breeding, rearing, staging, wintering, or hibernating. And whereas the legislation would gut environmental assessment process, speed mining and infrastructure development, and take a register first, ask questions later approach that would allow developers to begin projects before their environmental implications are fully known and allow for economic zones which will eliminate any environmental migration measures or protections. And whereas the legislation would eliminate provincial responsibility for federally listed migratory birds and aquatic species because it says such birds and species are under federal jurisdiction, even though the province has historically administered such duties. And whereas the government will enhance funding for the Species Conservation Program, which will seek contributions of more quadruple to 20 million each year for on-the-ground projects that directly supports efforts to conserve and protect listed species. The funding will only go to the projects in regions that would otherwise not be considered viable for housing priorities, essentially allowing for the exploitation of local ecoregions in Ontario. And whereas, while development is necessary for human progress, Bill 5 will impose significant challenges to mitigating water, soil, and air pollution, will overexploit natural resources and increase invasive species in each uniquely identified ecoregion in Ontario. And therefore, be it resolved that the Council of Plympton-Wyoming urges the government to pause the proposed legislation and maintain strong environmental laws that prevent extinction of species and protect local ecoregions. And furthermore, the Council of Plympton-Wyoming asks that the government recognize and give meaningful consideration to ecoregions in Ontario through their unique perspectives and preserve Ontario's natural heritage system in the application of any proposed updated provincial legislation, the long-term growth, sustainability, and well-being of our community. Council, you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that this one has garnered a lot of attention in Ontario in particular. So hopefully that's sending a message as well. We'll go towards supporting the impact.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further? All those in favor? This carried. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, item 6, any staff reports?
Which is supplementary.
Okay, let's go to that supplementary agenda. Council. A motion by Councillor Vasey, seconded by Councillor Bojan, that the report by Mackenzie Baird, planning technician, dated May the 23rd, 2025, regarding a limiting distance agreement request 4473 Arbor line be received, and that bylaw 54 2025 be taken as having been read 3 times, finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. Of Mr. Douglas.
Yeah.
With us this evening. Is there any questions on this report? Councillor Rodriguez?
So I've learned with this. Have we ever done one of these before?
Can I answer that?
Ms. Nada?
The mayor? No, we have not in Wyoming, but we have them in other municipalities when there are situations like this. There's something that is, it's registered as a title, there's fees involved, trackings involved, but they certainly are an option and they are allowed under the Ontario Building Code.
Thank you. So my concern is with this spatial separation. The fact that there's a lot of leniency built into it, and I'm more concerned about the fact that we have a volunteer fire service. We don't have I don't believe in this area like city water or hydrants. So I believe, if I'm correct from reading, spatial separation has to do with kind of, if you don't separate it, you have to do different things with the building as it is to make it more fireproofs, to keep that mitigation measures down, should there be a fire. So I think that, I don't know why we're not going that way, because that's normally traditionally. I know I've heard you speak to it, particular in different meetings where there can't be that separation, where there has to be requirements to an existing building to bring it up to code. So I'm not sure why we're not going in that direction, first of all, and I have some very real concerns about our ability to be able to provide proper fire services to this location.
I can. May I call on Connor, our Deputy Chief Building Official, to answer those questions for you, to explain the limiting distance agreement, spatial separations, and what the differences are.
Mr. McEachern, you're more than welcome to take the floor. Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you. And that's a great question and great point. So yeah, we did review this specific building. And you are correct about spatial separation. The idea is to stop spread of fire between buildings. So there's a specific distance that they have to stay away from each other based on the type of building, area of the wall face, number of openings, and that sort of stuff. So this specific building is a pole barn type construction. So to actually fire rate this exterior wall would essentially constitute tearing out the entire wall and reconstructing it. So it wasn't a feasible option. Was an option that we looked at. This specific application was also circulated to the fire chief, I believe, as well, who didn't have any concerns with this specific agreement. So what this will do is essentially prevent any owners of the future residential lot from constructing a building within a certain distance of the existing agricultural building. It is noted that that pole barn is probably getting somewhat close to end of life. In terms of, if you're gonna invest in completely reconstructing that wall, it really wasn't a feasible option for us. So we felt that this was the cleanest, most straightforward option for a severance that had already been approved. And the issue really is stemming from that new property line being established adjacent to this building. So it is something that we're reviewing on future planning applications, specifically for severances, to ensure that the spatial separation issues are dealt with kind of early on before the complete application is made.
Councillor Basie?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I can appreciate the fire aspect of it, but by putting a line across the ground doesn't change that it's already there. So the fire dangers are already there, no matter who owns the house. So with it being a pole barn, there's not a whole lot of the structure itself that's going to burn. So I really don't have much of an issue.
Other further questions? Councillor Rodriguez?
Thank you. If I may respond. And I agree with you, but there's gonna be two different owners here now. And I guess that's where the concern comes in. If it was the same owner, it makes more sense, but where you have two different owners now. But then obviously that's what this is all for, because there's gonna be. If I may ask one more question. Why did the lot get severed, or why is the proposed, or the severance like this? Why didn't it follow the tree line?
I guess I can answer that. So,
Mr. Douglas, go ahead.
yeah, so we set the, we tried to keep the lot kind of at what made sense for size, like the well is at the back of the property. But really the building that we're talking about, the pole barn, wouldn't really be of value to someone who's purchasing a residential lot. But for myself as a farm operator in Plympton Township, that building has a fair bit of value for storing grain farming equipment. And so we also had a separate access put into the farm that the township did for us as part of the drain work that they did last year or 2 years ago. So that we can access that drive shed separately. And so I guess that's why we picked the lot line to allow the driveway to go with the residential lot, but keep the drive shed with the agricultural lot, because it really, there's already sufficient outbuildings for the residential lot. There's not a lot of really purpose for that building, but there's a lot of purpose for it for me as a farmer to be able to continue to store implements in it.
Other questions? Councillor Wolvett?
So just legality wise, this is all registered against both properties so that everybody clearly understands, whoever sells water, that minimum distance has already been agreed to before you purchase whatever take place. So, and the fire chief has agreed to it and looked at it, the chief building inspector. So it sounds like you have no, even though we haven't done it before, you don't have a big problem with it. That's kind of the way I'm sizing it up.
It's not.
You are correct.
That's all I.
Anything further? We'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Council, let's go back to our regular agenda. We'll go to item number 7. Nothing added to that, clerk?
Nothing to separate.
And nothing under item 8, no correspondence.
No action required correspondence.
All right. Let's go to item 9.1. Correspondence recommended reading and routine approval and information. Motion by Councillor Van Claveren, seconded by Councillor Wolvett, that the correspondence items A to C related to recommended reading, routine approval, and information items not otherwise addressed by resolution be noted as received by the Plympton-Wyoming Council and filed accordingly. That would be our Committee of Adjustment notices, a committee of adjustment decisions, and municipal notification letter. Council, anything that you want to pull or recognize from that, Councillor Basie?
Yes, just the notification letter. I think it was very nice of Mr. Flack to tell us that he will take over our development charges and it'll be in our favor going forward. They will have a much better idea what we need on our development charges than the province. And they'll just keep cutting our funding, so it'll work out best for everybody.
Them.
Right, of course. That's what they have to say.
Well, that's a mouthful right there. Councillor Rodriguez?
Thank you. The question, is this the letter that has the change of the right of use for minor variances, lot lines?
Yep. Sorry.
Yes.
It's part of that.
Thank you, Councillor Basie.
Medication.
Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. It is briefly mentioned on page 2 of that letter. This is just breaking out all the different parts of the bill, so it does speak to some Planning Act changes there. It's not in full description, but just pointing to what they're proposing.
Anything further? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Good. New business relating to planning only. Councillor Wolvat, anything from you?
No, sir.
Councillor Van Claveren?
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy?
No, sir.
Councillor Rodriguez? Councillor Basie?
Sir.
Councillor Bojan?
Full sweep, no, thank you.
All right. Let's go to item 11. I have a motion by Councillor Rodriguez, seconded by Deputy Mayor McEwen, that the council move into an in-camera meeting of council pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001. As amended for the following reasons. Item A and B, personal matters, section 239, bracket 2, bracket B. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And item C, employee matters, section 239, bracket 2, bracket D, labor relations or employee negotiations. All those in favor? Those that are still joining with us virtually, thank you for being with us. We will be in camera for a while. We'll come back out and close.